Hi, good afternoon, and thank you for having me here. It's a great pleasure to take this opportunity to talk about something that I'm really passionate about. I'd like to introduce myself very briefly to give you some sort of context with regard to what I'll talk about. I'm a commercial musician. I take music that people will like and I try and make as much money out of it as possible. That's what I've always done. That's all I've ever done. I've worked in things like fashion shows where I chose the music that the models will walk on the ramp to, and I would convince a designer, use hard rock, use house music, use hip hop, and they will say, "Va, what a great idea, give me," and I'll take money for that. Then I would play it at fashion shows. Then I've DJed for about 12 years commercially. When I say commercially, I mean I wouldn't do it for free. If somebody wanted me to play music for them to dance to, I'll say how much you're going to pay me in terms of cash or some sort of reason for me to do that. It wasn't just for the fun of it. I also sang for a heavy metal band called Millennium, which was, we started in '86. And heavy metal is a pretty aggressive form of music. That I did do for the fun of it, but made a lot of money in that also, but all the money went back into the band to make videos, to make recordings, to buy equipment, to go on tour. So on that project, we made money, but we broke even at the end of it. 1999, I started working in FM radio, and I worked for a company in Bangalore that had a radio license that was eventually called Radio Indigo, or it was called Indigo FM at that time. I did that for 2 years, and for the next 10 years, I would program various radio stations. I started Red FM when it was just Bombay, Delhi, Calcutta. It was meant to be an older person's radio station playing Hindi songs after 2 years, but it started as an English radio station playing young music for young people, hence the name Red FM. It's kind of an aggressive name. But we didn't make any money on that, so we targeted an older Hindi-speaking market, and eventually we just went broad youth/adult, which is something the commercial team liked very much because they could go to an advertiser and the advertiser would say, "Are you covering my market?" And the salesperson would say, "Yes," and give them money. The point is, I've always done this for money. That's what I do. So I don't want you to look at me as an artist speaking from passion about the importance of art. There are such people, and I have a deep respect for them. Some of my closest friends are those sorts of people: doctors, lawyers, drivers, carpenters who also play music out of passion. They do it because it makes them feel good. It's cathartic. It's something which they have to get out of their system, something which they have to, I like to use the analogy of vomit out. It's something in their stomach, some sort of creativity, some sort of idea. And until it comes out, until it's shared with other people, it's only going to make them feel bad. It has to come out in some way. I think a lot of you here can relate to what I'm talking about, as opposed to doing something for money. So what I really wanted to talk about is it's a nice title, and it is quite catching. I wish I came up with this myself. I'm not that clever or well-read. I picked this up somewhere, and it did kind of lend a title to what I want to talk about, which is the importance of independent music in India right now. And there's a term called indie music, which I think was coined in the mid-'80s, especially in the UK, and eventually in the '90s it was used in the US. Referring to a type of business practice where musicians wouldn't go to a large record label, they would go to a much smaller record label. The consequences was, if you go to a very small record label for a contract, they won't give you much money. They'll help you with contacts and advice and experience, but not much money. In exchange for not giving you much money, they'll give you a lot of freedom to do the music you want. In contrast, most musicians, especially the pop musicians, would go to a major record label, which is about 85% of the world's music today is released on major record labels. They will give you a lot of money. All of it has to come back to the label. It's not a charity, it's not an NGO, it's a business. So if a major record label gives $1 million to an artist, they want all of it back and then some. There's no point in breaking even. So in exchange for giving you a lot of money, in lending a lot of money, they pretty much take control of the creativity of that art, of that music. For example, an artist would want to talk passionately about their experiences growing up, and they would write songs about it, and they would have a really good voice, and a really good skill with writing songs, a major record label would say very quickly, change your look, it's not appealing, cut your hair, wear this, give some sex appeal in the videos, etc., learn how to dance, and for God's sakes, don't speak to the press because you don't know how to speak. That's what a major label would do, and squash their creativity into a commercial form, which sometimes actually makes a lot of money. Happiness, not so much, but it will make a lot of money. Remember, this is a commercial enterprise. It sounds like I'm talking about something evil which I'm against, and I'm really not against this. It's required. Every society, every culture, every existence needs commercial art for whatever purpose. Call it advertising, call it bums on seats in a cinema. It makes a little difference. In order to have expensive art, somebody has to pay for it. Even if it's a sponsor, that sponsor is doing it for a commercial end. It's very rarely out of the goodness of somebody's heart. If it was, we wouldn't know where the money was coming from. Right now in India, I think a lot of you know, we have, oh, I've got to turn this on. In India, most music, most music doesn't come from people like this. Most music in India comes from people making music, essentially jingles to promote feature films. Whether it sounds like a jingle or not, because it's a long form, 7, 8, 9, 10 minutes, doesn't make much of a difference. The act of making a song for a feature film is identical to the act of making a song for a product. It's written, composed, created, and produced to a brief. And that brief invariably comes from one specific person or a couple of people, the producers, the directors of the film, where the money is coming from. And there's a commercial reason they're doing this. It's not to propagate a certain genre of music. It's not to propagate a certain culture. It is to make money. It's a commercial aim they have. And again, I repeat, there's nothing, in my view, that's wrong with this or something that should be stopped or prohibited or monitored. It's there, it exists. If the songs weren't there to promote a lot of the Hindi films, maybe we wouldn't see so many of these Hindi films. But in the West, we've seen a lot of music, especially the big genres, the classic music genres, blues, jazz, folk music, even going to as far as funk, soul in the 50s and the 60s, and in the 70s you had disco, glam, punk rock, and going into the 80s, hip-hop and EDM to where we are now, where the Billboard charts, if you look at the Billboard chart in the US or the Radio 1 chart in the UK, it's 80 to 90% either EDM-based or hip-hop-based. And it's easy to look at EDM and hip-hop as commercial forms of music, but when they started, they were as raw, as grassroots, as folk music, as blues, as jazz. They were absolutely grown from the ground upwards to what they are today. They didn't start from nowhere. They didn't start from a corporate saying, I wish we could make money from music. How about this sound? Let's try it out and see if people will buy it. They started by a genuine emotion, a genuine feeling that became a commercial entity. And it's easy to say that we can copy these things, but in truth, we can copy the sound, not the essence of it. Now, all of these are what we call Western, whether it's the US or Europe or the UK or Australia. English-speaking countries mostly have come up with these genres, whereas in India, we didn't really have that. Most of our songs, most of our music has been made for films. These are 3 examples, and I'll give anyone my life savings if they can tell me why I've chosen these 3 particular people. This is, of course, Bob Dylan. Looking at you, I don't think any of you don't recognize him. Yeah, I'm sure all of you recognize Bob Dylan. The guy's a genius. I don't need to say that because the Nobel people said, you're a genius, here's an award, here's some money because you're a genius. He took 6 months to say, thank you, here's my speech. But nonetheless, he's a recognized bona fide genius. But the point is, in the 60s, when he started, he didn't start out to say, I want to be a genius. He didn't start out to say, I want to make money from my music. He didn't start out saying, wow, I could be a rock star like this person, like that person. There weren't really any rock stars except the rock and roll guys at that time, of which he certainly didn't want to be part of. What he did see in the US at that time was the civil rights movement. The civil rights movement, for those who aren't aware, it was what it sounds like. It was a movement at 3 levels where people realized there was inequality in the US, there was a lot of racism, there was gender discrimination, and sexual orientation wasn't being addressed at all. So mainly the first two was what the civil rights was all about. And Bob Dylan was very passionate about these movements, and as any poet, as any singer, as any creative person would do, when they have a passion which they want to get out, he started writing songs about that. Now, it's not literal. He didn't write anthems saying, let's all get together and stop these people what they're doing. He suggested his feelings in his songs, Blowing in the Wind, These Times Are A-Changing, The Times Are A-Changing, etc. He suggested what was going on in his mind. He suggested where he felt the world should go in his music and his lyrics. And it was beautiful, and it did change the world. Single-handedly, no, but it certainly was part of the change. Can anyone recognize this person over here? Okay, good. So I've saved $100 from somewhere. It was a bet. His name is Jerry Dammers. Jerry Dammers was a musician in the UK from a town called Coventry. In the late 70s and early 80s, he started a record label called Two-Tone Records. Two-Tone Records was all about a genre, it's a subgenre of music called ska, S-K-A, which is a Jamaican form of music. Ska would eventually become reggae, and reggae would eventually create subgenres like dancehall, etc., which gave birth to Sean Paul and a whole bunch of modern artists that we have today. He was a ska musician, a keyboardist, and he realized there was another problem in England which he wanted to address. And again, it wasn't a conscious effort to say, I want to talk about this. As a musician, he wanted to play music, and as any creative person, you want to use your creativity along with your passion and couple it together to try and get your message across. It's a lot more satisfying convincing people of your message or convincing people of your point in a creative way than merely sharing a Facebook post or a newspaper article. It's a lot more passion if people can discover within the art what you're trying to say. They have a sense of discovery, hence there's a likelihood of them taking more action on it if they discover it. Two-Tone Records had many bands. The three big bands they had was one called The Specials, which he played in, one called The Selector, and one called Madness. At that time, they were huge, huge. The problem he was tackling was racism. And it wasn't just a casual form of racism, color of the skin, accent. It was a concentrated effort by Margaret Thatcher's Conservative government to blame brown people, anyone who wasn't white Caucasian, for all the problems in the UK at that time. I was there. It wasn't pretty, it was nasty. At the beginning of the 70s, mid-70s, we had punks, we had disco, we had glam, and it didn't really affect people of color. But towards the end of the 70s, when Margaret Thatcher took over, anyone with color was blamed for the economic situation, low salaries, unemployment. Everything was put on the brown color people. He wasn't a civil rights person as Bob Dylan. He wasn't like that, but his friends were black from Jamaica, from the West Indies, and he just felt it was an injustice. So he started this record label, and as I say, it wasn't merely started for this purpose of talking about the idea of anti-racism, but he wanted to include the idea that racism per se has no place in England. It's just an excuse that the government was giving. The bands that he managed that were on the record label, it wasn't a stipulation. It would just happened organically that they all had whites and blacks, men and women. It made no difference. If they could play, you're in the band. If you're old, doesn't matter. If you can play, you're in the band. You could be a young female singer playing with a 50-year-old black person or a white person. It made no difference. The way art really should be, because they worked together to make this music, and it made a difference. It didn't change the government. That would happen later. But it did sow the seeds for a feeling against the government that 10 years later toppled it and changed the whole UK system to what it currently, well, what it was about a year ago before Brexit. But it did actually have quite an impact. Dadlani. The reason I put Dadlani there is because we have Dylan, Dammers, and Dadlani. It's not poetry, I must admit. But I needed to put three faces over there to signify what my story really is about. And the fact that they all start with D, hopefully, well, it amused me in the middle of the night anyway. Dadlani is also a hardcore musician. He makes Bollywood music today, we all know him. But when I first came across him, he wasn't just a Bollywood musician. He was a rock musician. He still has a band called Pentagram. Well, they were around up to about a year ago. And Pentagram's music has always been pretty aggressive. Rarely they've come out with a song with a trivial theme like romance, or I'm happy today, or let's go and party, or the sort of stuff you'll get in EDM lyrics today. Rarely he's written, in fact, I don't think he's ever written lyrics like that. Many people have problems with Vishal because of his extreme political views. And that's everyone's right to have. But few people can question his intellect. Few people can question his intelligence. It's very difficult to do that. When you argue with him, you hear it back. You may not agree with him, but he knows how to put an argument together. And when Pentagram wrote their songs, inside almost all of their songs was some sort of, I wouldn't call it hidden meaning, it wasn't an Easter egg, but there was some essence of what he was about, what he actually wanted to say. The analogy is giving him a microphone in front of 1 million people. What would you say, Vishal Dadlani? He's already said it. It's already in the songs. And it's the same liberal, slightly left-wing views that I think every moderate in this room has, because we all consider ourselves moderates. We all do. That's just the nature of people today. We all consider ourselves liberal, moderate, liberals, etc. So that's what he is. It is a coincidence that they were all three of these people are liberal moderates. If I could find somebody who was slightly right-wing, I would happily put their picture up also, because it's not really about politics per se. It's about the idea of somebody having the creativity inside them that's going to get attention from a lot of people, and when they've got the attention, they deliver their message. And I feel that is very, very important. The message itself is their business. I'm not talking about the importance of a left-wing view, or a left of center, or a liberal moderate view. I'm talking about the importance of a platform, an artistic platform, where people can talk about and share their views for whatever they're worth. I think that's important. These are three words which, I've written songs from the mid-'80s. I've written quite a few songs. I've written jingles, I've written songs for other people, pop songs. I've written rap songs for people. I've written my own songs with my band Millennium. And it's always come across these three words without me even realizing it when I've tried to isolate three words, adjectives? No, not really, but three words. Which summarize how I create songs, and I think how everyone creates songs, it comes up with these three things. You always derive it from somewhere. I don't think anyone's ever created a form of music without any roots, except maybe for the German krautrock, which deliberately was created without any roots. I think every genre has had some solid roots, which can be traced right back to the blues 120-odd years ago. But it's always been derived from somewhere. Even maybe a new instrument would come in, maybe a vocal style, maybe a lyrical pattern, maybe a melodic style, or a recording or a production technique. There's always been deriving from existing ideas to tell your own story. Collaboration, we've seen this. Jazz, at the end of the day, if you wanted to put one adjective on jazz, it would be collaborating. It's an idea of a few different ideas coming together at one point in time and exploding into music that people really haven't heard before. But it's rarely one person who comes up with a jazz piece of music. It's always a couple of people jamming together or talking about ideas which come up with something. Now, these two happen a lot, and this can happen in Bollywood music, this can happen in jingles, this can happen in any commercial form of music, but the one difference when you want to tell a story, when there's a passion inside someone, is the emotion. That's what makes the difference. And that's what, frankly, when you listen to Bollywood songs, when I say Bollywood, I mean film music, and I don't mean it in any derogatory way. I've got a healthy respect for the musicians, the producers that we have in the country. It's absolutely world class. But when you listen to the emotional content in those songs, you know deep down it is contrived, it is fabricated, it is not a real, genuine emotion. Much in the same way that the greatest actor will be acting the emotion. It may well be method acting the emotion. Nonetheless, it's still an act. It's not a real hardcore emotion. It may tap down to a real emotion, but it's not necessarily their story. For that, there has to be the origins of the emotion. Why is somebody upset? Why is somebody angry? Why is somebody extremely excited, extremely happy, extremely hopeful? All these emotions come from deep down inside a person. And when it's a creative person and they derive a certain set of ideas, musically at least in this context, from what they hear and their experiences, they collaborate with other people, it all comes together, and that's when you get a new sound. That's when you get new music. That's when you get music that hasn't been heard before. And that's when somebody in the music business will put a label on it and call it something so they can commercialize it. And again, there's nothing wrong there. But it has to grow. The grass, if you like, has to be free to grow before it gets cut. I'm not the best person with analogies on a Sunday afternoon, forgive me. But you get the point. It has to grow from somewhere. Once it's allowed to grow, then it can be used, as opposed to merely growing it in midair. It's not real. It's fabricated in that case. This is the music business as we have it today, especially in India. This is the musician / music lover or music consumer in the middle. The term music consumer in India is an oxymoron because very few people, we all imbibe music, we all share music, we all talk about music, but not many of us actually contribute to the music economy. Not many of us actually make an effort to pay for it. And I'm not blaming anyone, I'm the same thing. If I get a free pass, I'm not going to say, no, I want to pay for it. Maybe I should. The point is, the person in the middle, whether it's a musician or the fan, the music fan, is being bombarded by these 4 reasons for them making the music. One is the films, and when I say films, the film industry, the advertising industry are saying, this is what the sort of music should be, this is what we're looking for. Don't do something raw. We don't want tablas, harmoniums, that's all 70s. Keep it techno, keep it electronic today, keep it modern. Now that's fine for their movie, for their ad. Radio, I programmed radio for 12 years. Many stations. I've spent crores on research on which songs people actually like, which songs they don't like, how to play the songs, how not to play the songs, rotation patterns, day part restrictions, etc. Radio and television has a huge impact on the music that we actually get to hear. And it's, as I say, the reason I started by talking about myself is to give context. Because some of the rules for programming today in FM radio are rules that in 2005 I actually wrote down. Rules about having very few songs that you play over and over and over again. If you think back to 2002, 2003, and 2004, and think about, especially Bombay, you could listen to any one of the stations, whether it was Win FM or whether it was Go FM at the time, certainly Mirchi Radio City and Red FM. They would be playing upwards of 1,500, 2,000 songs a week. That means they'll use 2,000 songs to make a playlist. Some songs will be played over and over again, and some songs will be played once a week. It was my idea in 2005 to say, no, we're going to play less than 200 songs for a month. Over and over and over again, thus the meaning of the word ad nauseum. It made people feel sick to their stomachs. But it worked. It worked. It didn't just work subtly. From number 7, Red FM was number 7 in 2005. By the middle of 2006, Red FM was number 1 in every single demographic. Just by playing the same songs over and over again. You see, the problem is, the industry listens to the music in a way that the audience doesn't listen to it. The industry listens to the music 12 hours a day and they're saying, I'm hearing the same songs again and again and again. But users listen to radio 20 minutes, 25 minutes a day. So as far as they're concerned, they're not getting enough of their favorite songs. And that was the research we got. And in 2007, from 150 songs, we broke it to 120 songs. The same songs over and over and over again. This is a business. This has nothing to do with love of music. I was a good programmer for the simple reason I had no emotional connection to the music whatsoever. It wasn't as if I hated it, but I certainly didn't like any of it. I wasn't playing my type of music, which I like hip-hop, I like grunge, I like metal. None of that was getting played, and it shouldn't have got played. I could have played grunge non-stop. I had the authority to do that, but it wouldn't have got us any money. It wouldn't have got us advertisers, it wouldn't have got us listeners. We were in the business, or I was in the business, of getting listeners, taking those listeners and renting them out to advertisers. That is the nature of commercial media. Dress it up in whatever way you want to, that's all media does. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with it. It's a business after all. These are sponsors, dressed very smartly for sponsors, I must say, but they are sponsors. They also have a huge impact on the music that we hear. They sponsor live events, they sponsor DJ nights, EDM festivals, music festivals, gigs. They put money down there on the condition that the music sounds like this, or looks like this, or you don't do this, or you do more of this. Sponsors will say, do you have a female singer, a young female singer? Yes? Okay, here's the check. That's what they'll say. There's nothing wrong with this either. It's probably a little dark, but there's nothing inherently wrong with it. It's nonetheless a business. Lastly, the microphone represents the music industry. The music industry, again, is a commercial industry. It is not an NGO. They have massive offices, huge salaries. Their responsibility is share prices and shareholder interest. That's their responsibility. I'm not excusing them. I'm explaining what they do. With all of this impact on the music, it's little wonder that when you turn on the radio, you're hearing songs which many people in this room, I feel, would prefer not to hear, or to hear at least a lot less of. I'm not one of them. I don't listen to radio. Actually, I rarely listen to radio. That's where we are now, and that's where, when you hear music, that's where it's coming from. This is a film set from, I don't know, the 20s, 30s, 40s. It's old. There's a ship. The only reason I put this up here is to demonstrate the difference between the process of making a song for a film, or rather, the difference between making a film, an independent film, versus making an independent song or an independent artist. It's easy to say today with smartphones and editing on a laptop, etc. Technically, one can make a feature film with a smartphone and a laptop. When I say technically, I mean it's been done. People have done this. The movies have made a profit merely because the budgets are so incredibly low. But these are nonetheless novelty movies. They aren't mainstream movies with a brand new way of making cinema. Cinema is made with a lot of people. A lot of people means a lot of money. A lot of money means a lot of other interests of how we're going to get the money out. And this, again, is natural. I'm not complaining about this. Art does not have to be free of commercial inputs. But it's difficult to make a film today. It's difficult to make a feature film that's going to be played in a cinema free from any obligations to anyone and tell your own story. There'll be a producer, there'll be somebody investing in it who's going to say, look, do this, do that, so we can get the money back. Nothing to do with the story, but so we can get the money back and hopefully make a profit. That's the nature of the business. Compare that to this. I don't know who he is. It's a 4 o'clock in the morning picture download on Google. You type out independent musician with a guitar. This is what you're going to get. He looks Italian. I don't know why. The point is, he could make a hit song in less time than this talk is. I mean, I started 10, 15 minutes ago. By the time I'm finished, he could have a perfectly great hit song written, recorded on a smartphone, and ready for release on Spotify, on YouTube, and even Apple Music will take it if you go through the right digital distributor. This could be done. This is not an exaggeration. This is an actual thing. How long does it take to write a song? It doesn't actually take that long for somebody who's used to writing songs, unless they have no inspiration. And that's where we come to it. If he's inspired to write a song, he can just sit down 4 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and tell his story. If it's really nice, people will talk about it. If it's really engaging, people will share it. And that's the point, isn't it? If he writes a love song about the hard time he had with this girl in a relationship that he wanted to happen, but it didn't happen, we can all relate to it. But it's not really going to involve us at the point, have you heard this song? What an insight, what an idea. Wow, that's a cool song. The lyrics really move me, they provoke me to thought. No, it's very unlikely, it's very unusual where a song whose lyrics are based on romance actually trigger off, provoke thought. It's relatable, but not engaging. But still, he's free from all the chains of the money that would require to put in into a feature film. He is free of that to do whatever he wants creatively. As I say, when you're making a song, or you're making a jingle, when a musician's making a song for a film, as I say, you're sitting in front of an audience of one. And it is an art form, but the art form isn't always musical. It isn't. It isn't always entertaining. And I'm not going to give any examples, but I know a lot of examples of musicians, music directors, we like to call them, talking to the audience of one, and because they have that strong relationship, the job is done very fast and very quickly. This has no bearing on whether the music's good or bad. It just has a bearing on that musician feeling safe and secure that his entire audience of one is going to buy the ticket, or rather pay him for that music. As long as that happens, thumbs up, go back home, wait for the call for the next song for a film, and off he starts again. I don't know who this is again. I just spent a long time looking for pictures, but this does symbolize the audience of one in the studio when you're recording a song with the idea of pleasing one person. This is the shift, the paradigm shift of imagining when you're writing the song, when you're putting the song down and you're telling the rest of the band members, this is how the song I want it to sound, and it's going to really feel about this, and I'm upset about what's happening in the world, and I think this is wrong, and I'm going to shout about it, and hopefully the audience will enjoy it. When this is in somebody's head, the song will sound different. When somebody's writing a song with the expectation and the hope that this is the audience they'll play in front of, not the audience of one, but this type of audience, the song sounds different. It has something which we don't have enough of, and that really is what I'm talking about. It has passion, it has emotion. And these two things, passion, emotion, for want of other words, these two things connect way beyond tactical or practical ideas that people have. If somebody would like to see, I don't know, if somebody has an issue with garbage collection in Bombay, for example, they could write a song about that, and that people will practically relate to. But if they put it in a passionate, emotional way, it is the passion and emotion which people would not ignore, even if they disagree with what the person is saying. If you don't think it's true, I give you the example of Bob Dylan. Not everyone in America was a poet or understood poetry. Most people didn't. The vast majority of Americans aren't interested in poetry. But when Bob Dylan came out, and he said "Blowing in the Wind," and he wrote his songs, and he addressed civil rights for what it was, people stood up and listened. I'm using Bob Dylan's example because I think it's relatable with this particular audience. But that doesn't imply that he's one of a few. He is one of many artists. Actually, he's one of the vast majority of musicians around the world who make music simply because they have a passion burning inside them which needs to be expelled. They have a stomachache which needs to be expelled out onto the world. Come what may, they have to tell that story. I think Bob Dylan literally would have been ill if he hadn't addressed the civil rights in the way he did. That's the point that I think needs to be got to some extent. So what can we do? I've got two ideas. The first idea, and again, being a programmer, at one point I had 45 radio stations to program, and obviously I didn't do it myself, but the programmers kind of reported to me, and so I know this sounds very impractical, but the idea of having a certain percentage of music broadcast on radio and television, a guarantee that a certain percentage of those songs will be non-film music, non-film songs. I don't really care what those songs are. I really don't care if the programmer of that radio station wants to hear somebody banging two dustbin lids together and screaming at the top of his voice. If he thinks that's what he wants to play, great. But as long as a certain percentage of songs played or broadcast on the television, on the radio, if a certain percentage is reserved, I hate to use the word reserved, but that's where we are today. If certain percentage is reserved for non-film music, or what we call, unwittingly, indie music. Indie music or independent music in India simply means, in our context, a song or an artist who's making music that's not for a film. In that context, you have a certain percentage reserved for non-film music on all broadcasts. And not just on a 24-hour system. As a programmer, I know the number also. I think 20% of all music reservation would actually work. I think in 6 months, 1 year at the most, you'd see a huge growth in the industry. And if the independent music industry grows, it's only going to help the entire music industry. Whether it's Tips or Venus or T-Series or Sony or Universal, they all want new musicians. I know a lot of club owners in and around the country, and they have one surprising problem. You'll be shocked to hear their problem. Their problem is not a lack of audience. Their problem is a lack of artists. Now, this is shocking, because the people I normally tell this to, they're saying, but I'm an artist, I'm an artist. I said, well, you're an artist, but what effort have you made to garner attraction in a relevant audience? You want to play in Blue Frog, want to play in Hard Rock Cafe, the programmers there are going to ask the artist, can you draw an audience? Can you fill my venue with 250 people? Because if you can't, why should I allow you to play? It's a business after all. These venues cost money. Whether they're empty or they're full, they cost money. They need to make money. You can't just allow an artist to play there for free. Again, I repeat, it's important to put the financial considerations into this. This is not an NGO, it's not a charity. The idea is that people do need the music, they're not getting it. This is a system of making sure people do get it. The other idea I have is that everyone goes for gigs. Yes. Go for gigs, lots and lots of gigs. There's gigs happening all over the place, not just Blue Frog or Hard Rock Cafe or Antisocial. And these are great venues. The quality of these venues is actually very, very, very good. But there's dozens of other smaller venues. There's a massive, there's not one, there's multiple hip-hop communities who have small in-house parties, small in-house gatherings, with or without alcohol or in the middle. They have a lot of this sort of thing going on. As for EDM, there's a massive underground EDM community having all sorts of dance sessions. And you're not going to hear David Guetta at those parties. You'll hear the brand new underground, like the son of trap music. For a musician, they'll realize I'm talking about the latest, which hasn't been created yet or hasn't been heard yet. That sort of dance music that's not in a 4/4, maybe in a 7/4. I'm making this up, but it might exist at some point. It might exist. The point is, there are places. It doesn't just have to be a $250 or $500 ticket at a Blue Frog or Hard Rock Cafe or Antisocial. That's great. But there's so many other venues playing relevant music with independent artists trying their best to garner an audience, trying their best to say, this is what we're doing, and we'll get better if you can come back, because then we do more shows. The more shows we do, the better we are. The more we see faces appreciating or not appreciating our music, we'll know where we're going right, we'll know where we're going wrong. Will all the artists survive? Will they all make money? There's no probably about it. Definitely all of them won't. Definitely all of them won't. The best will make money. The rest will make a survival amount of money at least. A musician can always make money if they have their wits about them. But the point is the music will grow. The point is people will see that there's a hope that if one has passion, if one has creativity, if one has talent in songwriting, in playing an instrument, in singing, if one has a talent, they can see a future there. How does this impact culture? Coming back right at the beginning, what is the subconscious of a culture? What does that mean? And it wasn't just an arbid, I like the title, let me use it. I genuinely do believe if we look back 10 years from today and treat the music that was on radio and television as the soundtrack of the subconscious of that culture, what will we get? Think 10 years back, think 2007. What are the big songs that represent us at that time? What are the big songs? If we had to put a time capsule 10 years ago, 2007, what would those songs be? What would those songs be? I would tell you, but my pronunciations of those names are really bad, and you'll laugh. So that's why I don't want to tell you. Okay, I'll tell you. Bagdi Ke Boz was about 8-9 years ago. Sheila Ke Jivani was about 9 years ago. This is what represents our culture. Now, quickly talk about culture for one split second, because I want to clarify this point. I'm not talking about heritage. I'm not talking about tradition. I mean today. This is culture. What's happening outside with the penguins? That's culture. We may not like it, but it is culture. That is the reality, that is culture. It becomes tradition, it becomes heritage 10 years from now. And they look back, and they'll say, what do you do on a Sunday afternoon? And they say, we're going to see the penguins. They'll be laughed at then, but now it's culture. This is what it is. This is reality. And what my point is, if we look back at the music of that time, and we use the analogy that music is the soundtrack of that culture, thus the subconscious of it, and you can find out what the culture was really about by looking at the music that was written and appreciated at that time, you're not going to be very happy with what you find. You're not. And it will be nice 10 years later if we look back at this time and we say, yes, there were a few artists out there. Maybe not very popular, maybe not very rich, maybe not performing every single day, but they did do some songs which affected us, which triggered our mind, which provoked us into thought. There's 3 elements which go into every successful mega song, 3 different elements. You could have one of these elements or 2 of these elements, but the really big songs, they try and get all 3. One is the song should make you feel something. The song should make you feel happy, sad, angry, calm. That's what music does, especially if there's no lyrics. Jazz, for example, jazz excites people. Some people get very high blood pressure when they hear some jazz. Some people, the blood pressure goes down. That's an emotional response to the music. That's not a beat sort of thing. It can't be calculated scientifically. Some people react differently to different sorts of music. That's an emotional stimulation. Second one is thought. If a song can trigger off a thought, provoke a thought, instigate a thought, poke and prod at the person and say, did you know this? Usually this is done lyrically, usually. But it can be done without lyrics also. But think of the lyrics that provoked us. For me, Iron Maiden, it's changed my outlook on life. The lyrics that they had, it changed my outlook on life. Literally. Literally. And that's my own experience. Bob Dylan for some of you, maybe other artists would have made you thought, wow, that's a point. Maybe a different political view, maybe a different social or religious view, maybe a different view on the world. Like, yeah, okay, that's a point there, lyrically. That's a provocative or a thought-stimulating point. The third point, which is used, abused, and people think it's so easy, but it's a lot tougher than people think. The song could make you feel like moving, dancing. So it's the mind, the heart. I mean, I know the heart has no emotion, but it's the analogy. And again, I told you I'm not very good at it. The heart, the mind, and the feet. If a song can affect two of these things simultaneously, it will have impact. If it can affect all three, you're talking about a hit song. Now, all of these, well, the idea of putting a song that you're going to dance to, you can get loops. You can download them and make some sort of an EDM song or a hip-hop song, and people will dance to it. It's actually not rocket science. The mood of the music, we know now. There's a limited amount of emotions. There's a lot of different sounds put together. Okay, off we go. We'll have that sort of a sound. But lyrically provoking people into thought, that I think is where the opportunity lies. Am I speaking of English alone? Absolutely not. In fact, in India, singing and creating English music is actually a humongous waste of time. It really, really is. It absolutely is. We have so many languages. Even the small languages in India, the small rural languages, have a lot more users than English-speaking people. It's an elitist thing that we have, and we communicate in English for whatever historic reason. But let's not make a mistake of thinking this is the language people talk in, because it isn't. I teach music business and the history and context of music at a school not far from here called the True School of Music. And everything I have said today, I've talked to my students about. They think they're going to sit for a history class, and I'm going to say in 1935, 5 years before the war. They think that's what's going to happen. And I don't do that. Because history you can get from a book. Wikipedia is there. Let's be honest about this. Movies, documentaries, it's all available. That's not the important thing that I like to talk about. What I like to talk about is the context. The context is far more important. If it wasn't for the Second World War, we wouldn't have had rock and roll. If it wasn't for rock and roll, we wouldn't have had so many things. If it wasn't for slavery, we wouldn't have had the blues. If it wasn't for the blues, frankly, we may not be talking about music today at anything close to this level. We may not even have this sort of commercial music. Even in India, the blues has affected every form of music up until what we have in Bollywood today. Go for gigs and then share experiences. This is the big difference with this decade. The last 10 years and going into the future, it's only going to branch off from here. In the old days, in my time, in the 80s and 90s, if you wanted to share your experience, you had to be a journalist or a TV presenter, or you had to have a whole bunch of people listening to what you had to say, or you had to be a singer, talk in front of 10, 20, 30,000 people. Today, okay, it's done. Maybe one person's going to read it, maybe 10,000 are going to read it. But if you put it out there and it affects somebody else, you might get that chain reaction. And that didn't exist 10 years ago. That is the big opportunity we have today. So this is just my couple of thoughts about how important it is to have independent non-film music in India, and a couple of ideas of how to get there. I should have said at the beginning, you can interrupt me anytime if you have any questions or thoughts or points or disagree with what I'm saying. But I didn't, so I'm saying it now. That's pretty much, I finished. So anyone wants to ask or discuss further? Yeah?
So, independent music, let's say we didn't do this. I think you can hear me? Can anyone hear me? Yes. So, I think you talked about how independent music can connect with creative passion, emotion, and then eventually becomes commercialized, and then you have larger audiences that hear it. If that doesn't happen, what happens to
the musicians?
Commercial music becomes sterile? Is that what you're saying?
I wouldn't go so far as to call it sterile. It has little use. I mean, for all the art that we consume, for all the movies, the poems that we read, the books are out there. I don't know the ratio, but surely there's a humongous amount that just didn't make it to the top of the New York Times bestseller list or the IMDb Top 100. There's a whole bunch of stuff, and in music, I know for a fact, there's a lot of songs that people have never heard and will never hear. For whatever reason, that doesn't mean it shouldn't be made. Yes, at the end of the day, a lot of people will waste their time trying to do something that had no end game. But that's in the future. We can't tell that now. Unless we try, we won't know. If your point is that should a musician commit their life to something?
My question is more that what does commercializing do that's not independent? I mean, commercial is that everyone listens to it because I guess why is commercial different from?
This is the great question. This is the important thing about the difference between commercial and independent. You're familiar with grunge music? The Nirvana, Stone Temple Pilots in Seattle in the late 80s, very early 90s, there was an independent label called Sub Pop. And they signed on, they pretty much created grunge. I think for sure Nirvana, Stone Temple Pilots, I think Soundgarden, and even Pearl Jam. Except for Alice in Chains, all of them were signed on to this one independent label. This label said, we don't have much money, in fact we don't have any money. You pay for the recording, we're going to try and get it across the radio stations, we're going to try and help promote it. And they did, they managed. But as soon as these bands got popular, they all went on to major record labels. My point is, had they gone straight to the major record labels, those major record labels said, Kurt Cobain, you are a wonderful, talented songwriter. Wear this suit, and we'll give you the lyrics, and here's a lovely song which was written by, I don't know, and your producer, Quincy Jones. We would never have had Nirvana. We may have had some really exciting music, no doubt, because Kurt Cobain was Kurt Cobain, but my point is, we wouldn't have had the organic growth that Sub Pop, as an independent record label, had no choice but to allow these bands to have. If they'd gone straight to a major label, we wouldn't have heard grunge. Simple as that. And it's not just the grunge music. It's the same thing in Jamaican ska and Jamaican reggae. It's the same thing in heavy metal. It's the same thing for every single genre. Even Elvis with Carl Perkins and Jerry Lewis, even those guys, when they worked with Sam Phillips at Sun Records in Memphis, even those guys, because Sun Records was essentially an independent record label. They had no big money to say, we're going to send you on a national tour. They said, let's make the music that you want to make. I'm going to try and move it to the record stores. If those guys were in New York, if those guys were in California at the same time, they would have been commercialized. And my point is, I can't prove it, but it's just gut feeling. My point is, if they'd been commercialized, we may not have liked it so much. Because the commercialization would have taken away the raw essence of what rock and roll was, what house music was, what hip-hop started off as. They all became commercial, but to start with, they were very independent, fiercely independent. If that makes any sense.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, I don't have anything in mind. You talked about 20% sort of this quota having, but do you think that's very necessary considering now that the internet has basically helped independent music so much? I mean, and especially as commercial radio stations, for instance, and like I said, they narrowed down but they narrowed down to such a small sort of section, just 120 songs. They don't want to give up 20 songs to sell. That doesn't really get them the highest listenership, right? So I don't know how practical that is. But on the other hand, the internet has really been what has made a lot of these artists, a lot of music, like EDM, for instance, and hip hop, and different ways of consuming music. If you look at you talked about the charts, like hip hop has really sort of now been revitalized by streaming services. Because a lot of, that sort of really changed how it sort of went down in between when the whole sort of, digitization of music happened. A lot of other genres came and sort of, hip hop sort of moved down a little bit, and now with streaming is back on. So I was wondering that why do you think that is that really practical that you tell somebody, okay, it's kind of like your corporate social responsibility to sort of have this quota for like independent music. You should be doing it. Why would they do it? And do independent musicians even need it? Because they don't really nowadays.
As far as the radio is concerned, I probably should have specified that I didn't mean any particular radio station. I mean all.
Yeah.
If they all do it, because radio's listenership is not a unique number, it's always a comparison of competition. So if a certain station's number one, that becomes 100%, and anyone else is going to look at their share based on that 100%. It's the same thing as a business, I would reckon. The point is, I don't believe listenership would go down. I don't think they would either. I think listenership would go up. I don't think there's much traction in radio today for whatever historical reason. I don't think there's any growth in listenership, there's only a degrowth. I think this might revitalize it at best. At worst, it will have no effect in terms of listenership. Why should radio do it? If they look at it commercially, I think they would see the value in it. I think they would see the future in it. Right now, as a programmer, when I looked at the possible songs I could play, I knew full well that my list was identical to the Mirchi list, to the Radio City list. Whatever available, it was available to us all. Everyone. And with all the pressures that they had, the commercial pressures that we had, if a record label called me and said, Vehrnon, can you jam this song? Can you push this? Can you push that? We may or may not have done it on a favor, but if they said we're going to send the actor to your studio for a morning show interview, we'd pump up the song, for sure. So it wasn't just a raw what people want. Mostly it was, but there was a lot of other inputs. I think when radio programmers look at independent music, they'll be looking at a lot more of their own gut feel to start with. And after a year, after 6 months, a year, they could test those songs for the first time and actually see where the growth is. There was this Koliveri D from Chennai about 2011, 2012. It's a Tamil song. It's not a film song. It doesn't resemble any popular genre.
It is
a film song. I thought it was originally not made for a film, but it was included in a film later. It was made for a film. Okay. When we heard it, we saw the video that Dhanush was singing it in the studio. It wasn't part of the film. So that was the impression we got. I was programming multiple stations at that time, some Bengali, some Hindi, some other languages. And my music programmer said, we should play this song. I said, based on what? And they said, because of the YouTube views. And I looked, I said, yeah, that is quite astounding. That is quite phenomenal. The CEO at that time said, no, we can't play it because it's in Tamil. I pointed out that the YouTube listeners weren't just in Tamil Nadu. I mean, that would have represented a large percentage of Tamil Nadu. And I'm sure a lot of the viewers were down south. But I know that a lot of people in the north who had no clue what the lyrics meant were listening to it. The choice was made not to play the song. As soon as the other radio stations started playing it, I told my CEO, I think we should play it and we should bend our rules and re-examine the rules. And post that, everyone said, okay, fine, let's take each song on its own merit. And clearly the song had merit. I think an even better example is the biggest song on YouTube in the history of music, a song which has been heard, I think the latest numbers are 2 out of every 5 people in the world, according to IP addresses, have heard Gangnam Style. Now that has no right to play, there's no relevance to that being played on any Indian radio at all. It's not film, it's not this, it's not that, it's not even cultural. But very quickly everyone said that we have to play it, we can't not play it. The point of view from a programmer, instead of waiting for YouTube to say play this song, why don't they play it? Most radio stations test music. They have pretty scientific, objective ways of finding out if a song is popular or not. As accurate, if not more accurate, than YouTube views or Facebook views, etc. Play the songs, see what's happening. Listen to the other stations. Are they growing with their choice of independent music? Okay, what are they doing? Let's move here. And suddenly the game becomes frankly more exciting for radio programmers. Frankly, it'll become a lot more pleasurable for listeners. All around the world, when you're playing a brand new song, you get the artist in the studio to talk about the song. Why did you write this song? What is it about? What is the instrument? That reminds me of this Led Zeppelin song. Is it similar? What inspired you to do this? In all my time in radio, I never once called up any of the musicians and said, can you come to the radio station in the morning to be interviewed? On the other hand, as I've said, we've had Aishwarya Rai, Sanjay Dutt, you name them, we've had them in the studios talking about songs which they have zero input in. They mind it not. And again, I'm restraining myself from my own personal feeling that it's wrong. I don't think it is wrong. That's the business they're in. It works. It's a massive industry, and it's fine. It's not anti-anything, but it doesn't help music. It doesn't help music grow. I go so far as to say, if you talk about genres in India, there's only one clear-cut genre, organic genre, that we've had that's commercially massive right now. And I know it's massive. If you go to Chandigarh, Jalandhar, Patiala, if you go anywhere north of Delhi, right up north, Punjab, you go there, they're not interested in Bollywood songs. You can't program Bollywood songs over there. They're not interested. They're interested to the DJ who lives down the road. That's what they want. They're interested in the hip-hop artist who's got 10,000 views on a YouTube view. That's what they want to hear. I know this. That's the data coming in. There's a record company called Speed Records in Punjab. And that's all he does. Looks for the artists who've got like 50 views, 100 views, 200 views, listen to their music, as an A&R person should. And says, okay, let's bring them in and see if we can do something with it. It's a vibrant, relevant, cross-cultural, or rather cross-age, cross-generation genre, which works. There's modern Punjabi music and there's old-school Punjabi music. And you can get the same sound on one radio station. It's a brilliant thing. In Bangalore, we don't have that. In Delhi and Mumbai, we don't have that. For whatever reason. That's why I want to make it quite clear. For not one second I'm saying we need rock, we need EDM, we need hip-hop. What we need is a sound made by people at the grassroots level, auto drivers, sabji walas, what have you. People who make music from their heart, from their passion, with rudimentary instruments, but the feeling, the passion is there. Blues, remember, was not made by educated musicians. It was not. It was made from raw passion. That's all they had. Most of them didn't have more than three strings on their guitar, but they created the blues. It was made out of passion. A deep, racist passion based on 300 years of slavery. Come to India, we don't need that, but we certainly have other issues which things like rock and roll addressed, or hip-hop addressed. We have injustices, we have strong political views this way and this way. In India, we have a lot of people with views who, and some of them can make music. I'm suggesting you can always learn how to play an instrument. Most people, given time and the correct training and dedication, can learn how to play an instrument. But not everyone can write a story, not everyone can create that musical story, unless they have the passion. And my suggestion is, there's a lot of passion out there that doesn't know it can be used to make music.
But so are you both saying that this same idea of yours, which is very relevant, it seems important for radio, can this not be translated to the internet?
The point is, the internet is not, it's not very easy to control right now, because most independent music is on, as you say perfectly, it's online, it's all there. But it's difficult to get people to go there. That's the problem. Number one. Number two, legitimizing the music, you need radio or television. Even if it gets a million views right now, a million views on YouTube is not a big number today, unfortunately. So getting a million views, because people know, unfortunately, you can buy a million views. It's not difficult.
But you can buy radio time also, right? I mean, a lot of those...
You can, but not to the extent of that sort of rotation. Yeah. You can buy for sure, but not to the extent of that.
There's so many, there have been kind of independent artists that have got like a good example is the hip-hop that you mentioned. Now, Hindi hip-hop is the most exciting thing to be happening in the Indian independent music scene. I mean, a lot of artists like Divine and Nate are now being Bollywood movies being made on their lives. You know, artists like that who basically have they had a song that they made on their own. They made it, I don't know, for like as much the money. They shot a video in their backyard. It's called Meri Kalini, and it became like this huge hit. And they've got signed up to Sony Music, and they've got signed up to like Only Much Louder, places like that. And you know, they really have gone into make it in the sense that sort of just by doing a little video online, the internet has enabled them to do that, and that video may have got like 1 million views, I don't know how many exactly, but not like 10 million or 1 billion. But it's still possible to sort of, I suppose when you talk about numbers, everything seems small when you compare it to like Hollywood. But I think a large part of what's happening in the Indian film seems so much, it can be sustainable on its own. Maybe you can't compare it to the numbers of Bollywood, but it's kind of self-sustaining in its own way right now. That's something we didn't have 10 years ago, and I think the biggest game changer has been the internet, right? If you look at it that way, that's, I think...
I don't dispute what you're saying, I agree with you. I'm just saying that if we just leave it to itself, it may well grow by itself, but why not help it? That's all I'm saying. Why not?
I'm not sure that the guys who do this for expressly commercial purposes will be saying, yeah, sure, we'll give you that, sort of have the vision, sort of say, yeah, we'll take that. Right now, like, as far as I know, you might have like little outliers like Gangnam Style and things like that are just these one-off songs. That, again, it's a following. I'm seeing that it's got these YouTube hits, that's why I'm putting on my playlist. Whereas, as far as I know, there's only like Radio 1 right now, which is the only English language station that there is, which does I think they have a Thursday, I don't know if they still have it, but they had a Thursday night slot. 3 hours where they would program Indian independent music across languages. It wasn't just so that's the only sort of FM station where you can hear this music.
I think Radio City does a lot of it.
They have an online station, right? They have an online station. Radio City has Radio City FM, or Planet Radio City, where they program a whole range of independent music. That's online. I don't think that on the main radio station they still have like the extent. I don't think they have a dedicated slot for independent yet. And I mean I'm not sure that they will be willing to do that because at the end of the day, radio is so much. I mean, switch on the radio and the first thing you're going to hear is an ad, not a song. So and so it's so hyper commercialized at the moment, and it's not really expensive to run. The stakes are much higher. Whereas I think the freedom that the internet gives you is that it doesn't really cost you money. Put up like a song on YouTube and just sort of use the power of the internet now, social media to get people to listen to your music. I mean, again, the rate of success might be like 1-2% who really sort of gets there, but I think that that's the main difference right now between.
I just don't see a choice of internet or radio as being the issue. Why not both? Why not?
I mean, I don't think, like, for instance, there was MTV Indies. So MTV had this.
My point is that if you take an Apple Music playlist or a Spotify playlist of independent music, one has to want the independent music first. It's kind of like going to a religious organization and preaching the religion to the people already converted. That's not the objective here. If you want to find an independent music playlist, that means you're already there. But if a radio station that plays genre-free music to a population, essentially film songs, and then 20% of those songs are by independent artists, people will be exposed to the music. On internet, you have to discover it. It's not organic that you're being fed to it. It's not linear. Radio is linear, and that's where the excitement is. That's where the discovery happens.
But you know what happened with MTV Indies, right? This channel which they launched. MTV launched MTV Indies. It was 24 hours of independent music.
That's exactly my point. That's linear,
but that's shut down because.
But that's exactly my point. They shut down because it was only independent.
No, but it's also because it's not that they didn't have viewership. They had apparently they were sometimes the highest rated music.
They had a minuscule listenership. They had minuscule viewership. It didn't justify carry on. It didn't justify the budget to run it.
So
it was a tiny.
But MTV itself has got so much stuff happening that they won't program it there. And now they made that into their second Hindi music channel. So I mean, I think it's great. You're just saying I'd love for people to do it. I'm just not sure that they will.
Oh, let's convince them.
Yeah. So you spoke in the beginning about the civil rights movement and how that has sort of rooted music in other cultures. So speaking of our country and how we have a growing multifold of crisis developing at this point, people may agree, may not, but do you think independent musicians should, in response to Bollywood's lack of emotiveness and any contextualization of music in that regard, should independent musicians seek to anchor their music in more rights-based or emotions such as that, which have historically given music more cultural significance?
I think if you were a record label, a commercial record label, a major record label, a really smart one would suggest to do exactly what you're doing. But what I'm coming from is not looking for, it's like social media marketing right now. If your digital marketing tells you right now, don't just speak to people. That's what traditional advertising does. Don't just speak to people. Really good digital marketers find out what people are already talking about within the target group, and then insert the product as part of that conversation. That's what digital marketing, best practice digital marketing actually is actually meant to do. If you sanitize an issue to make it commercial, it loses its impact. Whereas if somebody has a passion towards an issue, if it's directly affecting them, I don't want to I want to give an example, but if there was a specific issue for a bunch of people, and it wasn't a clash between two people, it was just an issue which somebody had, which wasn't getting addressed, it wasn't being talked about, maybe a song would be the way to get it out there. But again, I refer to Bob Dylan as probably the best example everyone knows, because no one can pull down Bob Dylan. I mean, I've had arguments about Iron Maiden and Dr. Dre, and there's always somebody to pull these people down. I've never met somebody who could pull Bob Dylan down and argue that that's not that good. That's why I use it as an example. Myself, I'm not even a big fan, huge respect. But my point is, when you did it wasn't a conscious effort of Bob Dylan to say, how can I get the maximum number of listeners, sell my most records? civil rights, that makes a lot of sense. No, it wasn't that. I don't believe it was that. I don't believe it was that. I think most people would like very much to believe that he woke up in the morning before he decided to be a musician and said, you don't actually know the history of Bob Dylan. He was a big follower of a guy called Pete Seeger, who was a big follower of a guy called Woody Guthrie. Both of them created American folk music, and both of them were passionate about workers' rights. So listening to those songs when you're growing up, it was very natural for Bob Dylan to say, I want to tell the same stories because I believe in those stories. My point is, if Bob Dylan wasn't a poet slash singer slash songwriter, he still would have been part of the cause of the workers. He still would have been pro-worker and anti-capitalist. That's my personal feeling. Obviously, one can't prove that. So to answer your question, if somebody wants to jump onto an issue today, which they're not actually part of, it's kind of commercial at its core. You know, we all have issues. All of us in this room, every single last one of us, has had a romantic issue in their lives. Some sort of emotional, romantic problem. Everyone here has had that. That's why most songs are about romance, because everyone here can relate to them. You're taking a risk when you divide the room into halves and a quarter and then 1/10, and you're talking about the water quality in Borivali, for example. It's a dumb thing to write a song about, but that's why you need a genius like Bob Dylan to do it. Most people won't get it. For example, when you listen to Bob Dylan today, the vast majority of people don't understand the civil rights. What are you talking about? Women's rights, blacks, so what? The music's good, I love Bob Dylan, but they don't get the essence of what he was talking about. What if there was a Bob Dylan in Borivali right now, who was, I'm not suggesting Borivali has a water problem, I'm just saying as a random example of passion. If somebody felt passionate about something, they had the creativity and genius that Bob Dylan had, and they put that to a song about the water condition in Borivali. If that was the situation, that might become a trend, that might become a hit song. It may make the artist into something awesome. It might. It might. The music business, the art business, is all about mights. It's not about definite. You do this tall, this hair, this voice, this songwriting can be a hit. There's no guarantees. My point is, it's a limited point. More passion, more chance. The point is, if it succeeds, it makes a difference. And that surely is why we'd like to consider ourselves creative.
Your point of go for gigs, and you talked about a lot of alternate opportunities now to see smaller performances or to go out and see stuff. When did this start? How did this trend start? Was it there earlier and then did it die out?
The small gigs have started. No, actually, Bangalore I know a lot more about. Bangalore in the 80s it started growing very fast, but it was a college movement in Bangalore, and I think it's very much there today, the college movement for really young musicians to get their first exposure. In the US, to play in front of 10,000 people, it's very hard. It's very hard. Most American European musicians play for small clubs and goes bigger, 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 and eventually get to 10,000 people. 11 standard kids like me, I was standing in front of 10,000 people. My first ever gig was 8,000 people, representing my college, with my seniors holding bats and you better sing well. That didn't really make me feel good. But you get my point. The idea that somebody can just go on stage and perform is a fallacy. It takes practice, just like a great cricketer or a great driver, it takes practice. The college shows were there, lots of them. I don't think they're there so much today. As the college shows became less and less and less, the audience remained, and you had a whole bunch of these small clubs, some legal, some not legal, or organized private parties without tickets, etc. What do you call house parties, etc. They started, and that's very much there today. But the huge growth in the last 5 years, not just in India but across the world, is in festivals. That's the huge growth. And again, most artists who play at festivals will not take home a large chunk of money. But what they will take is a legitimate excuse to charge treble what they charged the day before. So if they're charging X amount today, they go and perform on a Friday at 4 o'clock at NH7 in Pune, the next day they can come back and do the same Blue Frog gig, but charge treble. Simply because on their bio it says NH7. And it's justified. It's a justified thing. Playing at a festival is kind of like your degree. It's a musician's degree. What have you done? I've got MBBS, I've got first class, whatever. What have you done? I've headlined at NH7. Okay. In the old days, it was the length of the hair. I know this by experience. Yeah, you had hair down to your waist to be a musician, because no one's going to employ you with hair down to your waist. So if you're a guy, so you had to be a musician or some crazy person. Either or, that's where my work came from. But the point is, festivals are growing all over the world. It's estimated today that around the world, musicians' income is, I think, 60% directly tied to live music. About 45% is from ticket sales alone, 45% on ticket sales. Across the world, musicians. I think 20% is on sponsorship for those events. So that's 65% from live concerts. The balance is 20% from streaming. The actual sales of music is down into single digits. Single digits. Merchandising is bringing in more money than purchase of music. So live music, that's why I'm not saying stream the songs or buy the CDs. That's not going to go to the artists. I'm saying go for the gigs. Today, we are in the era of live performance. It is live performance art. Call it whatever you want. Somebody goes up on stage, no one can just say, I'm just going to wear a jean and sing my song and hope it works. They have to have some sort of a presence. They have to tell some sort of a story. Otherwise, that'll be the last show they do, at least in front of an audience. So that's what's growing. The festivals, the small house parties, Blue Frog, Antisocial, even Hard Rock Cafe, they're only less than 10 years old, all of them. That's where the growth has been. It's not just Bombay, it's all over.
What are your thoughts about concepts such as MTV Unplugged and Coke Studio? So they take already commercialized artists and then they give them a platform to explore or be creative with their already existing creations or work on folk songs, for example, and do something. So what do you think about that? Where does it fit in?
Yeah, the concept is great. It's a beautiful concept. In fact, Aditya, the head of MTV at that time, he asked me the same thing. He said, why do you think this is not actually growing? It's not getting us the viewers that we want. You know, in Pakistan it's huge, in America it's huge, where it was. And I pointed out that all these cultures have what I've been talking about. They have already a pipeline for musicians to jam, to make music in front of people, and work with other musicians. We have the culture here, well, we have musicians who work with other people, but it's not a commercial, there's not a commercial value yet. It's a chicken and egg. You have a Coke studio, so musicians will say we have to work with other people to get there. The music will get better. Pakistan Coke studio was extremely successful, right? It wasn't. The first season was apparently crap. No one talked about it. It's been taken off. You can't even download it illegally. It's that bad, apparently. It was the second and third season when people realized we have to learn to work together with other musicians that we haven't met before. Cross-genre, cross-language, cross-barriers of music. We have to learn to work with other musicians in order to make great music. It's there. The habit exists there. That's why it was very organic for them to do. In India, we have created some great music. I just don't think it had the traction because I know for a fact a lot of it really wasn't jamming. A lot of it was recorded and they were miming it out when we were playing it. And that takes away the reality from it. It becomes drama, which is what MTV became very, very, very quickly. And it's expected. It's expected when you have a music industry based on singers who don't sing, dancers who aren't really dancers selling the song. I gave the example of, in my school, I said, who's written Bagni Ke Boz? And it was Ram Sampath. I said, would you recognize him if he came in here right now? The person who's written and been part of the most successful song of 2012 or 11, I think. Would you recognize him? Very few students would. And these are music students. It's not a random bunch of kids who have no passion. I said, would you recognize him? He said, no. That's all. That's all. And Ram Sampath said, he's a decent guy. They all are fun guys. All the music composers are fun guys. They're great on stage, they're comedians, they're entertaining, but they don't have a chance to go up on stage and do their songs. Why? It's not really their songs. Somebody said, I want a flute there. The girl is going to walk down the stairs. When she comes down, she's going to slip. I want a whoop there. And then the beat kicks in. That's not the way you make organic music. That's not the way, and I repeat, I'm not passionately saying that's crap and we shouldn't listen to it. That has a great purpose. There's an industry there. There's no reason to stop that. I'm saying augment that, add on to it. My point is, if you look at the 90s, when MTV first started up until 99, 98, we had indie pop. And there's a whole bunch of artists, Naida, Lisha Chennai, Shan, there's a whole bunch of artists making music, and some of them were really, really, really good. What happened was, at the end of the 90s, suddenly Bollywood took notice and they said, that's a good quality recording. That's a nice way of singing. Okay, let's take that. And so they took all the ideas, and in so doing, they squashed the whole indie in that sense, then Indian pop music, indie pop, again, Indian pop, or independent music, and squashed that whole scene. And it was replaced very briefly with that hideous 3 years of remixes. Remember the remixes? Which essentially are taking an old song, re-singing it with techno beats and a Casio program and stuff like that. Ableton, etc. wasn't around at that time. So we had that, and that pretty much killed any indie sound that we had. By 2004, it was back to films, to where it is now. Last 2 years, it's got better because of the festivals. I think at the beginning of 2012, I think it was 95% music on radio and television, radio, MTV, etc. 95% was film promotional music. Songs written for films to promote the films that were getting played. Now that number of 95 has come down to 85%. Which is a healthy growth and a clear direction that people want to go in at least. But I think the radio stations will also be the first ones to say, we're not hearing enough music that's playable on the radio. So we need more choice.
Like
Huh? I think, yeah, I mean, the trouble with her is I posted something on Facebook at the same time she posted, and she took all my thunder, so no one shared my post. And she slowed down the internet for 2 days. That was the only impact she had. It's a novelty. It's a novelty. It has no musical value whatsoever. I don't mean to be mean to her. What she's doing is great. It has no bearing on her career. She's not going to become an actress or model. She's not going to become a singer or a songwriter. It's great for her that she's got this. And if she can make money out of it, I applaud. That's good. I mean that in a healthy way. It's not music. It's not music. And I don't mean that it's not music, I'm a musician. I mean, it's not part of the commercial music industry. It has no bearing, it has no impact on us whatsoever. One way or the other. It's not music. She's not even singing in time.
Do we have any more questions?
I've got one. Sorry, I've handled digital marketing for N7 for 2 years. So I was handling the entire online marketing for went into 4 cities. And sometime 3 months back, I worked on a festival called Bollywood Music Project, which is being done Bollywood Music Project, which is being done by Event Captain. Now I moved out of OML after a while. So because I was on the ad and digital advertising side of things, I was very clued into the numbers, and it's a ticketing and marketing team that works together. So I used to work very closely with Insider. And one thing I've realized over 3 years of working on analytical numbers for music festivals is that nationally the audience is only 1 million strong, and that is just online consumption. I mean, you can try and slice and dice it in how many other ways possible, but the festival audience online today is only 1 million strong. Now, while working on Bollywood Music Project this year was very interesting for me because it was being headlined by Arijit and Sunidhi and the whole likes of Badshah.
Yeah.
For the first time I saw a crowd backstage for an artist, and that was because all the other artists wanted to meet Badshah. It's very different from what we are used to in the indie music industry, right? What I realized was looking at the audience, which is something that I always do when I'm at a festival. It was held in Delhi, and everyone knows the NL7 audience, so I won't elaborate on that. But at BMP, I saw uncles and aunties in salwars coming for events, kids in prams and like uncles, families, everybody out there. And it's such a wide-ranging audience because I realized the appeal just cuts across all sort of demographics, There's 2 points I want to make that I've realized about the independent music industry. The first point is that maybe we make some stuff which is too tailor-made for a smaller audience. I don't believe as an artist, you have to make something which only needs to appeal to 1 million people in a country of 1.5 billion, Maybe we can consciously try and let's take it up as an artistic challenge. Can we actually make something that appeals to way more people than we're actually appealing to right now? That's one part of it. The other part is that I think being a part of the industry, sometimes we make the mistake of being too exclusive. We're, as an industry, not very inclusive,
There are the grunts and the homegrowns and the cliques in every city. And it just remains, I go to gigs all the time and I see the same faces all the time. And people who go to gigs know this as a fact, that you see the same faces everywhere. Because it's not inclusive. I think the point I'm trying to make is that, yes, of course, the mainline industry out there has to be a little more inclusive of us. But I think us as well have to kind of open up our channels, try and say that maybe we need to make something which will appeal not just to me but my mother back in Pune as well. That's my 2 cents on, I think, what the independent music industry is at right now.
Two extremely valid points.
And another point I want to make was, yes, globally, ticket sales and live music is the larger part of someone's revenue. But in India, it's very skewed, not in terms of live music fees, but in terms of the festival money that comes in, it's 80% sponsorship and just 20% ticket sales. And it's a fact. Because, again, no matter, and I've sold tickets myself to the biggest festivals, all the numbers are obviously blown up and everybody knows that. So I won't actually share the real numbers. But the point is that no matter which big festival I seem to work with, we're just hitting the roof out there and we're not breaking it.
And what is the cost of any 7 Pune for the whole festival? How much was that ticket? The whole thing?
The price?
Yeah.
It's 4,500 rupees.
4,500 bucks. And when you're doing marketing, you still have that SEC A, B, C, right?
Yeah.
SEC A, what's the income for a household per month? The household per month?
SEC A is about
15,000?
No, it's a little higher.
It's a little higher?
It's about, say, 25 to
25. So look at 25 for a household. For a household, my point is, I'm not.
I see your point.
You get it?
Affordability.
It is elitist, whichever you look at it, by the expense, etc. It's elitist. I don't have an answer for that, but we do need an answer for that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm only trying to make a point. The other point is that the thing of a festival is we say that we're bringing 50 artists at the same price of a single artist, which is a 4,000 rupee concert. That's pretty much what Edison's built on in terms of the value. But we did Shillong, and Shillong in year 1 was as big as Pune was after 6 years of doing the same festival. Because there was a big programming reason behind it. Papon and what's the other artist? Zubeen Garg were programmed. Zubeen Garg is one of the biggest artists in Assam. And it just cut across, again, all demographics. We barely sold tickets online, but on the day, 8,000 people turned up to buy tickets on day 1. And it turned out to be the biggest festival for us, mainly because the programmatic appeal kind of hit on target. And of course, there was Megadeth and I'm forgetting. Sorry.
Who is this Assamese artist? What's the name?
Wailers were there and Megadeth was there. Zubeen Garg is he sings Spanish by Tarsing Mittal.
What sort of music is he doing?
So Zubeen's have you guys heard of the song Ya Ali? It's a Bollywood song. So that's one of his few Bollywood.
What are the lyrical themes that he's talking about, if I can ask?
I wouldn't know. I'm not a very avid Zubeen.
I think that I'm from Assam.
Zubeen,
yeah. So Zubeen Garg rise in 1990s. He came up with the first Assamese modern album, which had guitars and everything, and was singing youthful themes.
Okay.
Every year he keeps on releasing some Bihu album, which are folk tunes basically.
Okay.
He's the hero of Assam because he's the first singer who has made a mark in Bollywood.
Okay.
In his own way. And
that's all.
Bhupen Hazarika.
Well, yeah, but in the modern times.
Hazarika and Khalil Mohanty were the 2 big artists.
But I just want to clarify because I think it's important. When his lyrics, do his lyrics affect people? Is he addressing? Is he commenting on issues or at least addressing people?
Yes.
That's my point. I mean, it just goes to enforce what I'm saying. That a popular artist who's there, the fact that I haven't heard of him shouldn't, for a second, qualify him as anything less than he is. I mean, I'm not in that scene at all, so don't get me wrong. But the fact that he's drawing such a large audience over there, by playing independent music, he's an independent artist. But he's not just copying a sound from somebody else's, he's doing something organic. He sings in Assamese. If that's my point. My point. Had he done it in English, he would have got a bigger audience. The world Probably not. The same story with Rugby Richard.
See, but there's a difference between Zubeen and the others, and why he actually also does really well. What I respect him for is there was a controversy recently, and I only know about it because I happen to be in Assam. Otherwise, I'm usually not very clued in. He happened to sing the Bollywood song at an Assamese Bihu festival, and people didn't like it because they said, we're paying you to sing Assamese songs, you're not supposed to sing your Bollywood music out there, and they interrupted the festival. It was shut down. But the good thing is, Zubeen has kind of transcended on towards commercial or Bollywood music, but has also kept his folk music alive. And I think that's what forms his mainline appeal across different demographics. I think as independent musicians or people part of the industry, we ought to kind of follow that as an example.
The region is extreme. I performed in that region. I performed in Shillong also. It is extremely independent in the taste that people have. They have no obligation. They feel no obligation to reflect any other part of the country or any other part of that whole region. They believe in what they want to believe. They listen to what they want to believe and what they want to listen to. And that's the end of it. I went to a cassette shop there. I was very happy to see my cassette, my album there. But I saw the selection of albums there in the cassette shop. And it was just 111 copy because all the stock was in the back. It was one of those collections I would have loved to see in Bangalore, frankly. So this wasn't there. Old songs, new artists, really, like a full catalogue of artists, he just had it in the shop. But that just goes to show the passion of the region. Now, if it happened there, my question is, why isn't it happening in larger urban areas where technically it should have come by now? And my point is that if we get support from audiences who can afford to buy the tickets, the reason I was talking about the expensive the ticket is expensive for the average Indian. This is an elite thing. When you're going for a festival anywhere in the world, you're getting teachers, cab drivers, carpenters saving up their bucks to go to the event to see all these bands play live. NH7 is a great festival. I've been to quite a few of them. It's a great festival for the elite. It really is. Thus, the ideas which are shared on stage with artists like this, the ideas are shared, will only be shared in that community. I'm assuming this artist, I forgot his name, I'm assuming that his music is on cassette, on CD, is downloadable, and it's everywhere. And if he performs, everyone sings along with it. I'm assuming this, because that's the nature of a local hero artist. It's not just the music, it's not just the talents, it is the essence of what he's trying to say. And I bet when he's singing about personal experiences, not just reflecting what he thinks people will want to hear. That's no different from Bob Dylan.
He's not making it accessible. He's not actually doing what you're saying.
He's not consciously.
But he's doing what is true to him, which makes it accessible. It's not from here.
A part of it. So Zubeen incidentally also played his Bollywood music project. And in Delhi, now let's move out from Shillong, and in Delhi, I saw people chanting his name, and that is the best part. That's because I feel that's happened because Zubeen's kind of straddled both parts of it. So
quickly before I'm sure we're running out, very quickly, just one last thing, because the music industry has got this cyclic habit, and it happens with every single genre, every single movement in music, every single time it happens, you have the underground. And with the underground, you have passion. It's a small number of people who are very violently passionate about the music. The second it goes overground, you make more money, get more spread, everyone knows about it, but the core followers lose interest. It has happened with each and every underground turn overground. It happened with hip-hop, it happened with EDM, it happened with heavy metal. Where is heavy metal today? Megadeth played over here before the Shillong gig. There were about 2,000 people there, of which I was one of the 1,000 people who were complete. The balance 1,000 people, 500 people were wearing the wrong band t-shirts. So it had no relevance, less than 500 headbangers there. Great band, one of the best in the world, weren't drawing an audience out. The point is, even Megadeth, to the heavy metal fan, is a sellout band. The heavy metal fan of yesteryear who's moved on to underground stuff. Why? Because there's a need to be, I'm the thought leader, I'm the discoverer. What do you like? Oh, I listen to this. The underground stuff. The second the underground goes overground, there's more money, more exposure, but there's less impact. But that's fine, there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong. Bob Dylan did this also, to use his example again. He went electric, and his entire audience said, why have you done this? You're not pure anymore. By turning on an electric Stratocaster. Everyone said you're not pure anymore. So even he lost an audience, but he made a lot more money, and everyone knew about it. The point is the cyclic underground to overground. If this gets the start, then we can have genuinely homegrown sounds. I can't what's this artist's name? Junoon. I cannot imagine what he sounds like, and that's fantastic. That's fantastic. I cannot imagine his voice, I cannot imagine the instruments. That's why I would want to listen to him. And when I do listen to him, and I will listen to him, I know I'm going to hear some passion. I'll hear some of the older things first. And I'm sure I'm going to hear passion. Can't contrive that, can't put that in the studio. You get my point. That's what's fresh, that's what's really exciting.
So I think with that, we had this beautiful section today. Thank you so much, Varun.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for having me.